This presentation, Listening as the Foundation for Positive Organizational Psychology, is a part of the Global Listening Center Festival on Listening. So I wanted to briefly introduce myself and what I'm going to talk about today. My name is Dr.Laura Dryjanska, and I am an associate professor of psychology at Rosemead School of Psychology at Biola University in Southern California, close to Los Angeles. I have been a member of the Global Listening Center for quite a while and a huge proponent of listening. In particular, today, I'm going to concentrate on listening as the foundation for implementing positive organizational psychology interventions in addressing some of the current pressing questions related to workplace. In particular, Great Resignation and issues like achieving and maintaining diversity, equity, and inclusion at workplaces. I believe that listening is a core foundation for many different disciplines. In particular, in my case, today, I'm going to speak more from the point of view of industrial organizational psychology and give some background also of positive psychology. So let's get started. Well, how has it all started when it comes to positive psychology? How do we even define it? It's helpful to say that positive psychology can be briefly defined as the scientific study of optimal human functioning. So using research and sound scientific methods in order to understand what is well-being and how can we achieve it and how can we foster it. Positive psychology includes many different topics and subtopics and concepts such as love, gratitude, forgiveness, mindfulness, hope, virtues. I believe that listening is one of the topics that are crucial for positive psychology, and throughout the presentation, I will be making this connection. Let's talk a little bit more about positive psychology and its history. Some people would argue that it's been around for maybe about 30 years, but when we're thinking about the official beginning of the discipline, many trace it back to 1996, when Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, has made it the theme of his term as American Psychological Association's president. Something that we should remember, though, is that human strengths and what it means to lead a good life have been topics explored by philosophers and spiritual leaders for millennia. So theologians, philosophers, other scientists, artists as well, have been trying to address and answer this question for thousands and thousands of years. Positive psychology does offer some interesting science-based insight, though. Now, we've talked about positive psychology in general. How about positive organizational psychology or positive psychology applied in workplace settings? It's been defined in different ways. Again, probably one of the more well-known definitions dates back to 2010 when Donaldson and Cogg came up with their well-known article that sort of summarizes different findings related to positive organizational psychology definitions and what it's about. Their definition is that positive organizational psychology is the scientific study of positive subjective experiences and traits in the workplace and positive organizations, and its application to improve the effectiveness and quality of life in organizations. We can see already here a little bit that distinction between positive subjective experiences, so an approach of an individual at a workplace, an individual worker or leader, and organizations as a whole, effectiveness of the organization as a whole. Another sort of shorter definition that's been proposed is that positive organizational psychology is the study of that which is positive, flourishing, and life-giving in organizations. So again, that very much the emphasis on positive, on solutions rather than problems. And this, of course, includes many different topics. And I would say that the first one and the foremost one that I'm going to concentrate on today is listening to workers. We also talk about workplace resilience. virtues at workplace, how to achieve family work balance, and of course, many other topics. Now, my specific concern today, how can we apply listening in the realm of positive organizational psychology to a specific problem or issue that we are facing? Well, the issue that I have chosen is the Great Resignation. This term has been coined by an American industrial organizational psychologist, a member of the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, which is a division of the American Psychological Association. And it refers to this mass resignation. So many people across the United States, it's also true in some other countries, so many people quitting their jobs, ready to move on, finding maybe something that they consider a better job, a better opportunity, or quitting their jobs altogether and deciding not to work, maybe being a stay-home person in their family or whatever is the reason. So Great Resignation is evident. We can see the numbers, we can witness the fact that we've had a huge amount of people resigning from work compared with the previous years following the COVID-19 pandemic. But why is listening important here? Well, I believe that positive organizational psychology can really foster empathy and listening as ways of understanding and respecting workers. If we want to understand the Great Resignation, we need to understand the workers, people who are actually resigning. Why is listening important? We should listen at all times. We should listen to our employees before they make that decision to actually quit their job. Change is not easy. Changing a job is a big change, and yet people are making this choice. Shall we rather listen to them and try to find out what is it that's driving them to take this step? Even in the face of them already being very decided or quitting, it is crucial to conduct proper exit interviews, to talk to people, but especially to listen to people who have decided to quit and leave their organization. Also, what are some of the antidotes to the Great Resignation, or what are some of the ways in which companies are being able to attract people who already have a job and convincing them to come to them rather than staying at their present organization? Well, introduction of novelties at some workplaces can be very effective. Some novelties based on listening to the employees, based on understanding what do employees want or need, what will help them flourish. This is a way to retain employees possibly. Listening can also provide some useful tools to overall understanding of the situation, not only in terms of the workplace, but also people's home-related circumstances, housing-related issues, and things beyond the organization itself. Listening can prevent discomfort. Oftentimes, what leads people into resigning, quitting their job is a sense of discomfort. Just something isn't right. Maybe it's the relationship with the supervisor, colleagues, the way things are being done, the demands. Things could have been changed if we only listened to people. So listening can prevent that discomfort. It can also promote both personal and corporate or organizational well-being. If we only learned to listen well, we could spare some of the people that drastic decision of Great Resignation. Something else that I'm interested in, and it's very much in the realm of positive organizational psychology and related to listening, is resilience. So resilience is probably well known to many of us from a strictly psychological perspective of talking to individuals and people who have been through some very challenging, dramatic circumstances. However, resilience can also be a process that takes place at a workplace. How do we define resilience? Resilience can be defined as consisting of persevering and experiencing a growth trajectory in the middle of challenges, changes, disruptions, and other life stressors. People are actually able not to give up, even though the circumstances certainly point into the fact that this would be appropriate to give up, and yet they continue, they press on. In the light of resilience at workplace, it's very helpful to think about the idea, the mindset of positive deviance. Jeremy Sutton, who is a positive psychologist, has proposed that idea of positive deviance. People who are resilient at workplace. It's not a model or theory, it's rather that positive mindset present at workplace. It's a strong mindset. It's fairly simple, it's applicable widely, and it's brief. It's an approach that's ideal for facing an intractable problem that requires a solution, which includes social and behavioral change. So this is sort of the framework of the Great Resignation as such a problem that requires a major social and behavioral change. So now, having said that, what are some practical steps that we could take into fostering workplace resilience? There are 4 steps adapted from steps proposed by Pascale and colleagues in their 2010 treaty essay. And I would like to briefly discuss them in the light of listening. So first of all, in order to foster workplace resilience, it is important to define the problem and necessary outcome. How do we do that? Many different ways, but certainly where should we start? What is the foundation? The foundation is listening to workers and customers, listening to what is happening as we want to properly define the problem and understand the situation. Then secondly, we need to find out, so what is being done? What are sort of these common practices? What is the typical behavior at workplace that occurs? And the way we can find that out is by watching, making some of our own judgments and conclusions, but also definitely by listening, by asking people good questions, but by allowing them to speak in a spontaneous way and share. Similar ways in which we can find out some of the uncommon successful behaviors are watching and listening again. So on the one hand, the previous steps were interested in the common. What is it that majority of people are doing? And on the other hand, what is it that not that many people do, but what is it that is successful? What are these behaviors? How do they do that? And again, we can do this by watching and listening to both individuals who themselves are engaged in this type of behavior and others who are watching them or have seen them and are able to speak into this situation. And once we know that, once we have these first 3 steps as a strong basis for the further action, is the idea of designing an initiative or initiatives using what we have learned by listening. Once we've designed the initiative, we should listen well so that we can refine it. Ask for feedback, ask for ideas, show it to someone, ask them, and listen. Listen well, apply what they're saying. And even once the initiative is being implemented, then it's time to ask for feedback. It's crucial to ask for feedback. Now, how about issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion? Quite related to Great Resignation, some people are searching workplaces that are just more welcoming to them, that welcome and embrace their multiple identities, or at least allow them to feel comfortable when it comes to their multiple identities that would be considered marginalized identities, or at least not the majority type of identities. According to some recent research, 75% of US companies have increased their focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, only 46% would say that they are seeing signs of improvement. So simply put, it seems like in spite of spending some money on initiatives for diversity, equity, and inclusion, making some conscious effort to do that, there has not been that much progress and signs of improvement. Why? That is the question. And I believe that at least part of the answer is that there has not been enough listening. done, not enough listening to the employees. Listening to employees is essential to develop a deep understanding of their experiences at work, especially when it comes to issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what I would recommend is that companies make it a regular discipline of listening when it comes to their employees, that we start to explore critical questions and rectify problems by listening to workers. That in turn can help build a better organization and even create a world that is perceived as more just and fair and equitable by the workers. So, how do we do that? A regular discipline means that listening should become a norm of each workplace, a part of a workplace culture. We talk a lot about cultures at workplaces, cultures at organizations. We talk about climate and atmosphere. However, we don't often hear about listening as a part of culture. Wouldn't that be really a game changer to have organizations and companies and businesses try to build in a culture of listening, truly listening to their employees in order to make a difference? So that brings me from the great resignation to the great reimagination, as mentioned in the study that was published by Deloitte in 2021. What is a great reimagination? It is a fundamental review of work systems that can help companies overcome future shocks that are sure to come. So we're not assuming everything will go as it is. On the contrary, we're assuming that there will be some major changes. And great reimagination helps us to review the work systems in order to face these changes. And what is the starting point? What should be the starting point? I would argue that the starting point should be listening. In order to really reimagine our company, we should be able to understand the skills of our workers in the light of their passions, in the light of what they would love to do. It is by listening that we can foster creativity. We can learn what are people's passions. What listening allows us to do is to also offer a worker some flexibility as to what job to do and where to do it. Their own project. Many people at workplaces like to refer to it as their own baby, and be able to really truly work on what they're passionate about. Maybe that's not possible to do 100% of time, but if they can have a couple hours a week, an afternoon dedicated to something that's their own project. And how can we even identify it if we do not listen to the workers? That's an absolute necessity, to be able to listen well to the workers and concentrate on that. Let's take an example of a working mother of small children, who is partially working from home, partially from office. And she may have an idea of a project that would help other moms, something that would be beneficial for other mothers. And just because someone sat down with her, likely her supervisor or leader in an organization, sat down with her and asked her, is there something that you're passionate about? Is there something that you would like to develop? And she's talking about the project for other moms of toddlers or little kids, and just her eyes brighten up. And here the key is to listen. How can a good leader make a connection and really help that person develop her passions and be able to respond with creativity? And the added benefit of basing the great reimagination on listening is the fact that listening will, in this way, foster agility and creativity at workplaces. The Division of American Psychological Association, Division 14, the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, every year does a survey of what are some of the core topics, top 10 interests in industrial organizational psychology. And one of the very important ones throughout the recent years is agility and organizations that are able to be flexible and agile in adapting to forever changing circumstances. So moving into so many different next normals rather than just some type of a constant new normal, being able to face these numerous changes is what's important for the core base and foundation of listening. So I hope I was able today to demonstrate the connection between positive organizational psychology and listening as a basis for addressing some challenges and issues, and also really taking advantage of some opportunities that can be discovered if we only listen to workers. So we have looked at the Great Resignation and what can be done to prevent it or properly address it based on listening. We have also talked a little bit about some specific steps in order to implement workplace resilience or positive deviance, if you wish, again, based on listening throughout every single step. And we have also talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion at organizations as an important challenge today that organizations, at least in the United States, are very actively pursuing. And moving from the Great Resignation all the way into the Great Reimagination as a process based on listening, the discipline, regular discipline of listening in the organizations. So I wanted to thank you for your attention, share some references to very recent literature and studies, and some less recent, very good resources, books and articles, and some online resources when it comes to positive psychology, positive organizational psychology, women navigating leadership, and of course, infusing that and looking into the importance of listening throughout that. Below is my contact information. Don't hesitate to contact me by emailing me. And I wanted to thank you for your attention.